Hello my friends, thanks a lot for joining me today. I am hoping this turns out to be a really helpful video. It's about products that are actually easy to put on, easy to apply. User-friendly might be a word you attach to this video. I do think there are some things out there that are convenient. I think I talk a lot about multitasking on this channel. Some things are very low maintenance and don't require a lot of touch-ups. There are some things that I think just have a simplified makeup theory attached to them, like it's just easy to figure out the color scheme and what would look best and all that. But this video is kind of pushing some of that aside, and we're really focusing in on feel and application and putting on, and what are actually some simple products to work with on the skin. I do see this being relevant for a lot of different people. Immediately what comes to mind is someone who's just starting out with makeup and is just kind of getting used to manipulating and maneuvering different formulas across their skin. But maybe you're one who struggles with coordination. Maybe you've got some limited mobility, or you've got arthritis, carpal tunnel, different things with your hands that make it hard to have the control you want to have doing makeup. Maybe vision is a concern. I know my mom talks about trying to do makeup in front of a super magnified mirror every day. And when you're in situations like that, the easier the application, the less fussy, the less tricks you gotta know as far as application, the better. Do you have to do makeup in situations where you're in a moving vehicle or a subway? Do you have sometimes non-ideal lighting situations? And it would be great if your products just had a very low margin for error. You'll want to look at this video. I think all these products I mentioned today, I really carefully chose them, and I think they're things you can jump into without having a lot of practice or background knowledge with them. I don't think any of them take a lot of extra tricks, lots of explanations, extra tools and techniques pulled in to make them work. That's not what this video is about. So if you think this video might be useful for you, welcome aboard. We're gonna do a full face application, really demonstrating every little thing I'm talking about today. First things first, a great easy foundation to put on. I definitely wanted to go with a stick foundation because you're going directly to skin. So you don't have the sometimes awkwardness of pumping something out or shaking something out onto your fingers and then having to smear it on several areas on your face, and then also make that product travel and blend far across your face to hit every area that you want covered. So with a stick, it's very obvious where the product is laying down, and if you got the right stick, it should glide on easily, and then from there it should blend effortlessly into the skin. So some of you guys know what I'm going to mention here. It's the Bare Minerals Complexion Rescue Stick. I wear this in 3.5. It's a shade called Cashew. It feels incredibly good to put it on the skin, and I feel like as it pulls across the skin, the glide is just terrific, and I'm barely holding this stick. You know, I'm not pressing hard, I'm not trying real hard, I'm just streaking it on, as you can see, pretty much all over. So that way, once I start blending, the product doesn't have far to travel across the skin. I'm using a dense brush here, and I'm just kind of going over, and the areas where I really want a lot of coverage, I'm practically thinking more about pressing that into the skin. And for a cream formula stick foundation to be able to blend when all I'm doing is just gently dabbing across it like that, that is an easy to blend product, all right? So I love this product for that, and I think it just doesn't get much easier, much more user-friendly as far as a stick foundation goes. And then as I get here, like on the sides of the cheeks, I don't need quite the coverage. I can be a little bit more practically buffing with my brush as opposed to doing that patting motion over the areas where like I had some melasma or darkness to cover up. Here you can see I'm just kind of sweeping, buffing. It is literally the most low effort blend. You could do it with your fingers, but I think the brush, even like the size of this, see the size of this F84 from Sigma? You feel like it's just doing so much work for you. So I really think the brush makes it easy. My skin is even, covered. I still feel like it's super fresh. This is a great everyday foundation stick for medium coverage and could not be easier to put on. And for the same reasons I'm encouraging the use of a stick here, the same applies for concealer. I know I've talked about this one quite a bit. It's the Neutrogena Hydro Boost Concealer that I wear in light, and I mentioned this in my like makeup for people who don't like doing makeup video. It could not be a more self-explanatory product. There's no real question of how much do I put on, because as long as you are streaking it over the area where you need it, that's how much you need. You know, there's not a lot of guesswork here. It's more like just see problem, cover problem, and the glide again, is so great. There's a little core you'll notice in this product, and I think that gives it a little extra moisture. And there are a lot of concealer sticks that are way too dry, and this just goes on like an absolute dream, blends in just as easily as your foundation. And look, I'm just sticking with the same old brush here, and I'm using the same technique, but you'll notice that that concealer shade was a little lighter and is going to therefore make my under eye area look a little brightened up. Just that dabbing, pressing motion, that's enough to actually get a product like this blended in and give you maximum coverage. And then sweeping or buffing, that's gonna shear it out just a little bit more gently. There's different schools of thought, I think, as far as things that can be used with fingers. These products can definitely be used with your fingers and blended out with them, but I don't think fingers are always automatically easier. I think sometimes it feels fussier, messier perhaps, and the proper brush can feel like it's doing so much work for you. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like things just happen quicker. So there we are with our concealer blended in. We've bumped up the coverage and the brightness with that step, and the skin feels, I mean, I would say kind of dewy to the touch. This is a great summertime combo, I think, if you're dealing with the dryness that comes with sun exposure during the summer months and you're just noticing your skin needing that little bit of extra moisture. This is great. Plus there is an extra SPF 25 in that Complexion Rescue Stick. Now as far as powder goes, I would say pressed is definitely easier and less fussy compared to loose, especially when I'm thinking about those people who are on the go, those people who are just not wanting to fumble with caps and a lot of loose product. Compact pressed powders are the way to go. Also, I think there's less room for error when you're choosing something that's more of like a translucent powder. I've recently re-fallen in love with my e.l.f. translucent pressed powder, so if you're looking for something matte, I think that's a great option to grab for. It's just a few bucks. I'd use it with a little brush like this and maybe just set my under eye lightly. And look, just dabbing. Like, I could do this with my eyes closed. I could not be seeing what I'm doing because this powder is not really gonna steer me wrong. I know that I'm just giving it one gentle dab in. I can see a little on my brush, and that's all I need for each different kind of plane of the face where I'm applying it. So I kind of go T-zone there because I know that's where the oil develops on me, but here's another option. If you think anything mattifying anywhere on my face is not a good thing, I'm that dry, maybe look into the Milani Prep Set and Glow. This is again a sort of translucent type of powder, but it has more of a glowy finish. And this is very easy just all over the skin. It's not a highlighter whatsoever, but it's a powder that I think just really maintains the natural finish that our skin has with no makeup on it. You know how if you turn your head, you got nothing on, you can still see a little sheen coming across you, and this sort of reestablishes that. But they're very easy to put on because you can't screw them up. Just don't apply too much to your brush at one time as you use them, and really they're gonna deliver for you, and they're gonna help you sort of adjust that dewy texture that you come away with after using the cream sticks. Talking about blush, bronzer, and highlight, I think you really wanna find things that are effective. You know, they are pigmented enough, but yet not too pigmented, because when things are too pigmented, they become fussy. They become a product where you really gotta watch yourself, just barely dip in, and then maybe you're left needing to blend a whole lot more, and there's some tricks to know. But when the product is just at this perfect sweet spot of pigmentation where it's like, yeah, it shows up on my skin without a whole lot of need to build and build and build, but not so over the top that I feel out of control, like that's what we're going for. There's a certain palette that I know I've shown a look with this on my Instagram feed, Instagram stories or whatever, but I don't think I've shown it in a video. And this is from Nars, and it's called the Hot Nights palette. There are a couple of reasons why we're gonna be talking about this today. First off, the face colors. I feel these are effective, but they're not too dark and they're not too intense. They're intense enough to show, but not to the point where I feel like I'm slaving over them. Also, these eye colors, everything's got a gentle sheen, not really a shimmer, but like a satiny finish, and it's a beautiful gradient. Anytime you see a nice, easy gradient in your eyeshadows, think easier blending, because you're not taking one shade from left field over here and trying to make it work from one shade you plucked over here and they look nothing alike. These have this gentle gradient toward depth and kind of in the same color family. The darkest shade is really not too dark. This palette is a good example palette of what I'm talking about, both for eyeshadow and a couple of cheek products, but it's not the only thing out there that would work. I feel like the topic of easy to use eye and face palettes could be something I could dive into in its own special video perhaps, so let me know if you're into that. But for now, we're just gonna focus on these face colors, and you've gotta kind of adjust your thinking here depending on skin tone. If you got a deeper skin tone, you might need to seek out something that's a little more appropriate for that. But trying to not go with something that is too terribly dark for your skin as far as that bronzer or contour shade goes is going to give you something that doesn't take as much time to blend into the skin, as much work, and it's harder to go wrong with it. But it's a fine line, isn't it? Dark enough to be seen, not so dark that it's going to require extra blending. This shade I think actually shows up on my skin a little deeper than it looks in the palette. I do just find it very easy to use. I don't feel like I'm having to buff over the same areas to no end. You know, like it's just easy. We're gonna come back to that highlighter and the eyeshadows as well, but I'm gonna talk about an easy blush here, and this has been a blush I've used so much lately, so I do feel kind of like I know it inside and out now. Because I took it on vacation, it was my most used blush, and I think it again is that perfect sweet spot between, yes, it's pigmented enough to show, but no, not so pigmented that you're really having to treat it with kid gloves. And it's this butter blush from Physicians Formula in the shade Saucy Mauve. It's kind of like you look at it and you think, gosh, the light's catching it. How dark is that really? Or how light is it? I'm not sure. It has a gentle sheen, and the gentle sheen in this, I think, is another thing that makes it easy. Because really full-colored matte blushes, I think, are actually a little more difficult to blend. And this is just, it's dynamite, guys. Plus, the little sheen it leaves on your skin looks so healthy and fresh. It makes you feel like, gosh, maybe I could just skip a highlight. You know, I'm feeling so good about the way that blush left me. And just like that, I am done on the blending. Like, it's so minimal, the need for blending here, because it's just a really great middle ground tone and perfect texture. I just think it's hard to do better than that blush. And again, you could be in a low lighting situation. You could be in not your ideal environment to even have to apply your makeup and put some of this on and think, gosh, you know, I just kind of got it on my brush, I swirled it on the apple of my cheeks and upward, and that was all I had to do, and it's gonna turn out great. Now let's talk about the highlight in here. Intense enough, but not too intense, okay? So let's just apply a little bit of this. I like to use a little bit smaller brush for my highlight because I think it's just easier to see exactly where that's going on the skin. I could double up with my blush brush, and I have done that plenty of times, but if you're looking for more ease in placement, I'm using the smaller brush with the highlight, and I can see exactly where that's laying down on the skin, and it's blending super easily. I wouldn't even say I need to like buff over this highlight, but it's just kind of my tendency to go bzz, 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 bzz. And boom, we've established this healthy glow on the skin that I think looks really great and really fresh, but not like too much. And I don't think this palette is going to send you overboard in any way. We'll be coming back to that in a second, and also talking about a few other eyeshadow products that I think are just really, really easy. But first, we're going to move on to brows. I thought quite a while on this, and I do think that pencils, while it's the thing that a lot of people just immediately think they need, or that they need to reach for, is a brow pencil, I do not think a pencil is the easiest thing to use in your brows. I think you do run the risk sometimes of looking too harsh, too like made up as far as your brow goes. And I also think that pomades are not easy. I think they can look great, but I think they take a little bit of learning, a little bit of practice, some finesse, as I've said before, with having to use an angled brush and flip back to your spoolie one and go back and forth and get everything perfectly sheared out. Those are not the easiest ways. The easiest way, I think, is a brow powder. That was actually the first thing I ever used when I started working with my brows. A brow powder paired with a wax. A really great buy out there is from e.l.f. It's just called the e.l.f. Eyebrow Kit. I think it's about $3. It has the wax, it has the powder. You're good. I don't happen to have one of those on hand right now, but I do have this one from Revlon that's essentially the exact same thing. A wax and a powder. This also comes with a little brush that has two ends, which is nice, so you can use one to put the wax in first. The wax helps powder cling. It also has an itty bitty spoolie wand here, and I'm wearing this in the shade dark brown. I'm gonna start off and get a little wax going in here to establish some hold and a little bit of thickness. But you might say, why powder? Why is that easier? I think powder is one of the more subtle approaches and most natural looking approaches to filling in brows. Assuming you have a little wax that's gonna help them cling, I think it can be fairly long wearing too, but it's just gonna go in easier and softer looking than any other method. Now I'm using my other end of my little brush, and I'm going into my powder, which is just a nice matte deep brown. And I'm going to take this, starting kind of in the center of my brow where it's the thickest, and I'm going to sort of feather that into the inner part as well. I think you're going to notice a little slower buildup of color here compared to when I normally do my brows and might reach for a pencil. But honestly, this is the hardest method to screw up. Maybe that's a better title for this video. Products that are hard to screw up. But see, I end up with this brow that's nicely filled in, but it's really hard to make this powder look too intense or too over the top. But yet you establish that symmetry, which is basically what we're looking for with our brows, right? We're wanting left to right to look the same. I sometimes get asked, why do you even fill in your brows? You've got eyebrows. I do, but they're not exactly symmetrical left to right. And I've got a scar kind of on the tail of one brow that I always fill in, and you know, my inner parts aren't totally the same, and so this is a great little way to just even out the shape. And now if you finish that and you feel like, well, the process of going through my brows maybe made them feel a little looser, like they're not really holding as well, just go back to your wax side now that you're done and gently go over everything again. And that'll reestablish some of the hold. Now back to eyeshadow. I feel like I could have done this video and said, grab a shadow stick, any shadow stick, swipe it on, blend it with your fingers, and you're done with eyeshadow. There are some shadow sticks that are just that easy. Not every shadow stick is. Not every tone and texture is created equal. And I also thought that doesn't really help the people who are struggling with traditional powder shadows. And I don't think I can find any exception to this rule of applying primer first, like any shadow that doesn't really need this. I think every single powder shadow benefits from a little primer. So this is Milani eyeshadow primer. It's very easy to put on. I mean, you're gonna blend it in, and any color that this appears to have, this kind of beigey color, will just fade away, but it will give those powder shadows something to cling on to. It helps their intensity, it helps them last longer. Like, this is a step you just don't wanna skip. So I mentioned with the Nars palette the fact that there are some eyeshadows in here that establish a really nice, like, gentle gradient, and also the fact that they've all got this little bit of a satiny finish I think makes one blend really easily into the next. But I've got a few other recommendations here. One that I've recently talked about in my bite-sized review video, but the Maybelline City Mini Matte Palettes. These textures are so easy to blend across the skin. I've got a mini tutorial with this High Rise Sunset palette in that video if you would like to check out one of these in action. Like, they are so smooth. They require so little, like, going back and forth, doing any additional work. Like, they're just so easy. So there's that color option that's very warm. There's Matte About Town, which is a little bit more of like a neutral, not too warm, not too cool kind of palette. And then this one called Skyscape Dusk is a little bit plummy. The textures are so unbelievably consistent because they're all mattes. And sometimes mattes in different palettes can be the drier texture or the harder texture to work with, and these are so simple. So I would definitely recommend those if you want a shadow look that practically seems to come together on its own and doesn't require hardly any blending. But today we're going to continue on with this look with the Nars palette. I think these are just really great, easy tones to work with. I'm going to go to this one right here that looks just a little bit rosy and apply this to my crease with my Sigma E25 brush. So a brush that easily fits in my crease, is not too big, not too small, and this tone just really, like, it works naturally back into my skin. That's another thing. When you're choosing shades, that may be part of why neutrals are so popular, because it's not hard for people to really make them mesh and blend back into their skin. So look, I've got it applied there. I'm not spending a lot of time with it. It's just boom, it's there. It's pigmented enough, but not too pigmented. Going into the lightest shade now, and we'll just apply that under the brow. And a lot of times I also think of a shade that I put there to be something that smooths out the edge of what I just did. We've done kind of a twofer step there. Now on the lid, this is just easy, basic, everyday shadow 101. Let's go to that color and just dab it on. Just a little patting motion. Get a little brightness on here when you're doing shadow, doing a look in the morning. A little brightness you can bring to the eye, I think, really helps. And then we can pull in a little bit of depth with this plummy shade, which I find to be deep enough to show, you know, it's doing its job, but it's not so over the top that it's hard to work with. And I'm using that just patting motion across the skin. I think of my Once palette as well as something that I feel is user-friendly. The shades will give you some room to build them to your comfort level, and you can get some downright bold and dramatic looks with it, but it's not going to immediately blow you out of your comfort zone. Okay, so I've got my little plumminess there in the outer corner. I've put it on the outer part of the lid, and I've kind of let that brush wedge up toward my crease ever so slightly. This is kind of an easy two-brush look here, folks. I'm using my E25 again and going to this kind of cranberry color, and that's going to go in our outer corner and kind of help everything blend together now. It gives the look a bit more of a rosy vibe, and it's kind of like, here, deeper shade, meet the other shades. Folks, it's really that easy. I did not use a ton of additional brushes. I did not use excessive pressure. It did not take a lot of this product, but I also didn't feel like I had to be too careful also. Now, if you're wanting definition under the eye, I think a pencil brush is a great way to get it. It's gonna give you a little more diffused, easy to apply color compared to like a smudge brush or an angled liner brush. So I'm gonna go into a little bit of my plum here with the pencil brush. And the first place I put my brush is where the most color goes. So I'm keeping that first focused on the outer corner. Whatever's left can kind of come inward slightly. And now I've got the easiest soft definition on the lower lash line. So we're left here with a simple look that has enough depth, but it was very easy to use. Every shade here was really in the zone in its own kind of little color family, so it all really nicely went one color into the next, and we also weren't overwhelmed with a ton of shadow choices too. That's not really what this video is about, but the product itself was easy to put on. Next we're going to move on to eyeliner, and I've got a liquid liner option and a pencil liner to tell you about. Both actually kind of have a similar shape. They are a little bit fatter in the middle than they are on the ends, and I've talked about this Revolution Renaissance Flick liner pen quite a bit, but it is the real deal. If you are struggling with liquid eyeliner, this is what you need to be starting with. I have heard I don't know how much feedback back to me saying, I got this on your recommendation. I'm so glad I did. I can finally do liquid liner. There's something about the thickness of this pen right here that's easy to hold. You're not like struggling to grip some tiny thing. It's very easy. The tip is perfectly flexible. And then on top of it all, it's super black and it lasts. It's under $10 and it's amazing. Now, as far as pencil liners go, I kind of rediscovered something as I was planning this video, and it's the Smashbox Always Sharp liners. These are available for both eyes and lips. And the cool thing is that when you twist off the top, yes, it twists off, you get a perfectly sharpened liner every time. And not only does that mean you're gonna have a nice pointed tip, but you're gonna have a freshness and a glide across the skin every time that sometimes are mechanical liners that have not maybe been used so consistently, and then you do go to use them, they feel a little drier. This will always seem creamy because it's just been freshly like shaped up. So I'm holding this one here in the shade Penny Lane. It's a nice like deep copper. Fast forward to talking about lip liners. I have one of these in a red shade called Crimson. Exact same packaging, exact same design. You've got the sharpness and the precision, and you're gonna have it every time and without the fuss of pulling in a sharpener. So those are really brilliant products. They've been on the market for a while, but I'm gonna go ahead and demo this Revolution liner for you here. You're not gonna try to hold it right in here. Hold it, just go ahead and use it in the middle. Something about gripping it there. It gives you this added control and steadiness. And I have already used up, I think, 2 of these. They don't use up incredibly fast, just store them flat. Don't store them downward, or I think product floods out faster than it needs to. But I mean, it's just more control than about anything gives you. And I also find myself using my pinky and letting my pinky kind of rest against the skin, and that gives me added stability. Thinner lines, thicker lines, whatever you want to do. I wonder if they knew how well they nailed it when this was designed, or if they just thought like this would be a pretty shape, or if they knew that it would actually be 10 times easier to hold a little bit wider eyeliner there. I don't know. I'll sometimes take the line right above and then I go in and fill in real close. Now we're gonna move on to our mascara, and I'm gonna curl my lashes first. You probably know if you are one who needs to do this or not. Do your lashes stick out straight or even downward? Then you do wanna curl them. If you feel like they've always had just a nice natural curl to them anyway, this may not affect it that much, so you could just go without doing this step. This curler is from Laura Mercier, and I'm really liking it because I feel like, I don't know, it fits my eye quite well. It's nice and squishy, and I like to do little bitty squeezes as I hold it here. But the Tweezerman Pro Curl Lash Curler has also been a long time favorite. But I think the easiest to apply mascara is a mascara that doesn't make you slave over stroke after stroke after stroke. And there are ones that I really, really like, but like even CoverGirl Supersizer, you do kind of, there's a little trick to that brush, right? There's a flat side and a bristled side, and you've got to kind of switch back and forth between the two to get the best look. Supersizer from IT Cosmetics, yes, a little more expensive, but it really builds up your lashes so fast. And the brush is also not too big. It's not teeny tiny, but thank goodness they tapered it toward the tip, which makes it easy to get to your inner lashes. And it builds up and ultimately gets you to that volumized, lengthened out place faster than just about anything. And so boom, with just a few strokes through, I'm there. I'll even use just a teeny bit of this on my lower lashes just for a bit of definition there. On the topic of false lashes, like, they are fussy. They do require practice. They are everything that this video is not, really. But there is one thing that I want to talk about that may change your life if you've been struggling with them. I'm not saying like you have to wear false lashes all the time or they're necessary to complete this look. No, they're not. But if you're struggling with putting them on and you have not yet tried a false lash applicator, you need to get your hands on one of these. This one I've had forever. It's from BH Cosmetics. It looks like kind of a strange shaped pair of tweezers. And there are even some packs of lashes that are now selling one of these in there. And this allows you to grip the lash by the actual lash, and it takes your hands out of it a little bit more. But this lengthened out shape here does the job so much better than tweezers. And part of the trouble with using your hands to put on some lashes, if you're really familiar with the lash and with the process, it's gonna not seem like that big a deal to use your fingers and get it on there. But if you're new to it, you lose visibility getting your hand all up in your face like that. This takes your hand, and instead of being right on your eye, you're like several inches out, and you can really see exactly where your strip of lashes is laying down. So I will show you this going on today. Again, I don't think false lashes are easy. I'm not trying to say they still won't require some practice, but this may be the magical little tool that you've needed. So I'm gonna reach over here for one of the many sets I did not use while on vacation. Not completely sure what style this is, probably the Cocoa Lashes in Soho. I will definitely link to my false lash tutorial videos below, which describe everything in a lot more detail, but I take the glue across the lash band. You're gonna wait for that glue to get a little bit tacky before you attempt to actually place it on your lash line. If you go straight to the lashes, it will fall right back off. Holding onto the lash like this, you're gonna take your applicator and get it kind of in the middle, and it's just literally going to grip the lashes themselves. Are we seeing that? That's how we're holding it. I'm centering the applicator with the center of my eye. I want to lay this down right on my eyeliner. Boom. Then I use my fingers to just secure the outside and then the inside. Very glam lash, but a very easy process to get there. Very same process on the other eye. I just spared you the time of waiting for glue to dry. Now we're gonna talk about the best, easiest to apply lip products. And I'm gonna start off with a lipstick. It's a matte lipstick, and you might think, well, what about the liquid lipsticks versus a traditional lipstick? To me, I think a traditional lipstick is gonna be less fussy to put on than a liquid. I'm picturing like, what if I was doing this in a car and there were a few bumps? Which would I feel more comfortable putting on? Probably something straight from a stick. And there's something I really like about these Bare Minerals Bare Pro lipsticks. First off, it's a pretty big and wonderful shade range, but we've got something happening here with our tube, which I wish more lipsticks would do. I love the slim design. This is a skinny tube compared to the size of most lipstick bullets, but also this tube is coming up and hugging the product all the way. So if you happen to apply a little more pressure, or you hit that bump and it's like, whoa, this stick is not gonna topple over and and break against the side of the tube. That lipstick is being held there, you know what I mean? So that's the great thing that you often find with these skinny sticks, the Revlon Ultra HDs. I feel like those are a little harder to find sometimes, but that's a great drugstore option. They usually have a little more sheen and shine compared to these. But it's really the same packaging design, and I think it makes it easy to apply, more precise than a regular lipstick, number one, but number two, your product stays safer in here. So this is the shade called Strawberry. I really like that, but I'll also mention here, because I'm not sure which I'm going to actually put on, for something that has more of a glossy finish and is very much like one swipe across, you're not building it up. The Bobbi Brown Crushed Liquid Lips are awesome. I do have a dupes video that I'll link to below that gives some alternatives from different brands, but there is something I want to specifically shout out about these. You get all the shine and all the color without having to build, but also the applicator is really cool here. It's like a little doe foot, but the doe foot has been sort of propped up and edged out this way to where you can really take advantage of that entire surface area and not have to be dipping back again and again to get your lips covered with product. So I think I'll show you this. This is the shade called Hippie Shake, and as we go across our lips, we're not having to go back over this again. Getting the color laid down, and there's no fussy building. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in for this video. I hope this helped. I really put a lot of thought into the products I used and exactly why I was putting them on, and I took myself to a place where I thought, how easy is the process actually to get this on my skin? Again, I think there are more options where face color products are concerned, where eyeshadows are concerned. That might be something I expand on in the future, but I think everything in this video at least gave you an example to go on, an example of my thought process with everything, so maybe you can look at what you have and find some of these similar products in there. If you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you as a subscriber here. If you know somebody who this video might be perfect for, I'd love if you'd share it on social media. That's how the channel grows. Heck, maybe even leave it a thumbs up. That's easy to do, right? Thank you for your time, everybody. I will see you again very soon. Bye.